What we are constantly learning is that abuse is awful, unless it's committed by the left. Welcome to the Candids series, where it's just as it sounds. Candid, unscripted, right in the moment, because it's something that just needs to be talked about right now. So, let's get into this. Once again, media chooses their darlings. Mainstream media promotes peace. Either it doesn't fact check or they deliberately lie to you, figuring you too stupid to know fact from truth, or too lazy to dig for it yourself, and definitely too emotionally triggered to react any way different than they predict. Then through the masterful use of drama and emotion, they get people to swallow their pill. So what we've since learned through others, including other congresspeople, is that AOC's story that she put out on Instagram was faked. And yes, I said it, faked. Not just embellished, faked, made up, untrue. That is proven as her story has been completely unwoven by comparing it to the official timeline of events as they occurred that day at the Capitol building when it was overrun by protesters. Yes, she made it up. And with all the evidence coming to light, it is becoming easier and easier to prove, including her emotionally wrecked claim that she feared for her life because insurrectionists were clawing at her door for her. Why? Because it supports the image that she created of herself as a social influencer in a political seat. And her fans, well, they're going to support her no matter what, even blindly. Huh. You know, does that sound somewhat familiar to a narrative told about a certain other ex-political figure? Is it perhaps that since she pushes so hard for the never gonna let it die because it's just too valuable narrative of domestic terrorism and insurrection, and that she's on the forefront for the fight for censorship, a permanent green zone guarded by 5,000 troops in DC, truth czars, the forming of a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, that she has to fan the flame and assure that that fire burns hot? Remember, the greater context of all this. It's not just AOC. There are way more players than that. In fact, NPR just did a piece interviewing a former CIA director who said that Trump followers need to be treated the same as ISIS, even after backlash that CNN faced suggesting a similar thing. They don't care. They have an agenda, and I will be damned if they let that agenda fall cold. The stupid situation at the Capitol building was just that. It was stupid. But it was the exact ingredient that these hungry people needed. And now they're going to just milk every drop they possibly can from it, squeezing the life out of it, even so much so as to create new words like Trumpism, which in their language is synonymous with fascism, murder, death, Hitler, Nazi, Mao, Pol Pot, Stalin, Marx. Wait, no. Marx, that one belongs to CBLM. Anyway, back to AOC. Was she really a victim of people clawing at her office door? Of course not. We know that now. It was untrue. It did not happen. But the key was never for her actually to be a victim. She just needed to get people to believe that she is. That way, that's why she lied about even Ted Cruz trying to have her killed. She has no real integrity and no principle. She will stop at nothing to win, even if she has to throw a hidden handful of sand in the eyes of her opponent in the ring when the ref isn't looking. She's a careerist. Remember, she just needs people to believe her story. She even went so much as to take her fake story and tie an earlier traumatic life event with it. Though because of her lies earlier that she told, less people are going to be, inclined to believe her, especially since she can offer no real details or anything to back it up. Now, if she did experience something, really experience something legit, and I'm referring to her claim of sexual abuse, then we do emphasize with that, as we should with anybody who survives an actual assault. Though remember, that's a term used rather loosely nowadays. Now, I'm not saying that AOC's experience of trauma earlier in life is or is not real, since I really don't know. And if it is, I do empathize, as anyone should. But when she continues to lie and create deep divide, even to those who have reached a handout to her, an olive branch, if you will, like Ted Cruz, for peace. But she rejects it, and doesn't just reject it, but then immediately claps back on social media with claims of false stories that her fellow congresspeople are trying to have her killed, or trying to kill her. Then later, that protesters were at her door when other congresspeople have called her out. I'm sorry, but she's full of it. And she has shown that she is utterly untrustworthy. So can I call out another thing about her that smacks of leftist hypocrisy? Let me do it. She said that she peered through a crack in the door and saw, as she made very sure to point out, a white man in a black beanie. I don't know, but that sounds to me something like, what is that word that they use? That really bad, oh yeah, profiling. Now, I thought profiling was something only done by racist white. Now, you know what, I'll let you make up your own conclusion about that. Oh, and let's not also forget the photos that went viral of her just bent over and weeping supposedly at the border. No, not that one. Only to come out that the whole thing was faked. This is chronic for her. She's discredited herself past the point of being trusted or taken serious. And note this detail also. There were texts and calls telling all Congress people to head to the evacuation point or the extraction point. AOC ignored them, later claiming that she was afraid that other Congress people were trying to lure her to try to kill her. So on top of everything else, she is either stacking on more lies, or she's really that delusional in her anger and hatred created psychosis. That is why the cop had to come all the way to get her. She later changed her story again. You see, later in an exchange on, and I don't remember his Instagram or Twitter, I can't remember, but with the journalist who put the pieces together and called her out, she said that people were storming all of those buildings. They weren't. She wasn't even in the Capitol, but that is what she said. So let's give her that maybe she genuinely believed it, okay? So then she decided to return from Congress as the building was being stormed, even though her retelling of the event is over an hour before it actually happened, to her office, knowing that it was being stormed. The more it is analyzed, the less it makes sense and the less trustworthy she becomes. She is proving herself to be what so many of us have already known her to be all along. What is even more amazing is now, because more and more people are seeing her and her story for what it is, her office has actually drafted a letter demanding that social media platforms censor and shut down the posts and messages and pages of anyone claiming anything but her story is true, even asking all of her followers to dox anyone who they find doing the same. Her game is to emotionally manipulate the ignorant to generate support, and she milks it. I have seen the effects of this myself simply from receiving a scathing response from someone when I simply posted on my own personal Facebook page, "Can someone please give AOC a hug?" Yes, it was scathing. That is the power that she has over people. That's her influence, and that influence is her jam. And I'm sorry, but let's call a spade a spade. To deliberately manipulate people, knowingly preying on their trust in you, their ignorance, and their emotions, to use them for your gain, makes you a genuinely bad person. She preys on the easily emotionally triggered. In fact, in one quote of hers, in that now famous, or rather infamous video that she put out, she said this, that if this was her journey that my life was taking, I felt that things were going to be okay and that I had fulfilled my purpose. Obviously, we can't come right out and prove that she lied in that statement, because how can you prove or disprove feelings? But what we can do is look at a statement like that in the context of everything else and seeing that it was rather not a statement of fact, but a statement of manipulation. As I said before, a genuinely bad person. She is no woman to be admired, not unless the bar for women has been set so low that they now accept that many steps back in the progress that they've made. My gosh, people, this is what they do. How many of you have been on the receiving end of cancel culture and or censorship? Just another tool of cancel culture, of course. Whether, as was mine in that post I told you about, your character was assassinated, you were unfriended, you were called an untrue name, you were ganged up on, any of that? This is their move. They get backed into a corner of their own creation. They don't have facts to back themselves up, and they lash out in the greatest American collective form of social terrorism ever. Yes, cancel culture. You know, there's something to be said about the absolute disingenuous and cruel betrayal against those who truly experienced victimhood. When somebody like AOC falsifies trauma herself and shamelessly continues to ride that train in order to gain popularity and influence to further her own agenda, and cause, deliberately preying on the easily emotionally triggered. Do I think AOC was genuinely scared that day? I really don't know. At certain times during the event, I want to think so, and I can understand why. However, does that give someone in her position, with her pull and influence, a right to fabricate a story? And not just a story, but to do so with malicious intent in an already volatile and divided nation? I mean, if the media claimed that Trump was doing such and he was evil for doing it. So let's lower the level of her being a legitimate national security risk and just set her actions at the level of the individual person for a moment. This should absolutely shine a far more personal light on how she should be seen for what she is. Think about this. If military stolen valor is considered criminal and immoral, then shouldn't false stories depicting events that never occurred in order to promote a narrative of victimization carry the same weight? That is the danger of people who deliberately trigger emotion and who attract those who react by emotion. And even more, actions like AOC's are an absolute immoral betrayal of those who actually have. And I've not even mentioned the copious amounts of race baiting that she is guilty of in that same video. Oh, and men who believe in protecting women from victimization, to stand up against misogyny, you have every responsibility to call AOC out for what she did and who she is. Otherwise, you might just be complicit in the same unloving deception as her by letting her run unchecked. I've been attacked for suggesting AOC could use a hug in a prior statement, as I noted a couple minutes ago. Just a hug. That's all I said. That deep, malicious, and dangerous, and divisive, and abusive statement of mine. But you know what? I accept that I should not have said that. But not for the reason that I was chastised. I accept it because a lying, manipulative, power-grabbing sycophant like AOC, who preys on the weakness and the emotions of others while using that boost in support to attack and demonize other congresspeople for something that is not true, seeking their heads on a silver platter, she deserves no hug. What she deserves, however, I'll leave up to you to decide. So what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this video does mean something to you, if it connects with you, then I'm going to ask that you like, subscribe, and share. That's what helps to grow the channel. Maybe reach some people, get some blinders off, rescue them, save them, let them see what's really going on, bring them to our side, bring down the media. Who knows? But this is a fight we need to be in. So like, share, subscribe, as simple as it seems, really does help a lot. And remember this also. There is a side, as we've seen with AOC, that has forsaken integrity and principle. Don't do that. Don't do that. Set that standard high. Be that example to others. And always remember, use wisdom, use discernment, and don't ever, ever let anybody try to cancel you or control you with fear. All right. Love you guys.